Welcome back to what is our final session. It's been an incredible couple of days, and we've got through so many debates and discussion points, all manner of issues we've covered, and we thought we'd make this last section fairly general, so any question you want to put either to the panel across the board or a specific member of the panel. We're delighted that Steve Hartshorn, the National Chair, is back with us, as is Tiff Lynch, Deputy National Chair. Callum MacLeod, National Secretary, is also in one of the hot seats. Simon Kempton remains glued to his as well, our National Treasurer, and Mukund Krishna, of course, Chief Executive Officer. Welcome to, that's the best looking panel you're likely to see anywhere today, I promise you that. Let's have a look at our first question then. Comes in. This one for Steve from Toby, who says there's been a lot of scrutiny about firearms officers. How can we ensure that our officers are suitably protected and rewarded? And this did come up, Steve, with the Home Sec as well, didn't it? Yeah, it did. Thank you, Toby. If I try and address you directly down the camera, what we're doing, we're fully embedded in trying to make sure that the Home Office review that's been announced into the use of force, firearms officers, but every officer, is comprehensive. We want to make sure that the Federation is heavily involved to look at the reasons why. I fully appreciate that. I was a firearms officer myself for 13 years, had my blue card and took great pride. We also want to make sure that as a firearms officer you are fully trained, accredited and equipped to do the job properly, so that when the time comes when you are involved in an incident, because it's not if, it's when, and that can sometimes be on a daily basis, 2 or 3 times a day, that you've got the right level of knowledge behind it, so you've got the right resources to give your evidence properly. I'd encourage everyone to be a member of the Federation so that when the time comes you've got access to the very, very best legal advice from our panel firm solicitors, but also from the Federation reps that are there to guide you through the post-incident process and procedures. And I have confidence that we are doing what we can at the very highest levels involved with government, with the College of Policing, with MPCC, with the Police Superintendents Association, with the Chief Police Officer, to make sure we can get the very, very best outcomes for our firearms colleagues. I'm also still the National Firearms Lead, so I'll be working with Chief Constable Simon Chesterman, who leads the firearms portfolio, to make sure that they hear the views of our members involved in the firearms world. I also lead for the less lethal on the taser side, so should you be using your taser on that particular aspect as well, we've got good joint up thinking between both portfolios to make sure we can get the right powers and policies and the right laws. So essentially the Home Office review into the use of force, we will be feeding into that to make sure we can get the very, very best support we can. Do you sense, Steve, that, well, we heard from the Home Secretary, she's wearing a couple of hats. She said at the very end she's obviously there to protect the police and is very pro everything, but simultaneously she will also make sure the police are doing what needs to be done. Overall, do you sense she has your back? I think for any Home Secretary who said anything different, it would be political suicide. To come away and to say, we haven't got your back. Yep. I mean, Theresa May perhaps wasn't our most favourite Home Secretary in the things she said. We got accused of crying wolf. We proved that very, very wrong. So I'd like to think the government have learnt their lessons by saying that, because as I've said repeatedly, the right conference, nothing we have asked for has ever been unreasonable. We know our job. We're very good at it. We've got lots of experience. You look at the panel, you look at our members, our Federation reps across the country. We do an amazing job. For the numbers we have only have about 1,200 reps across the country for 140,000 police officers. That's a phenomenal amount of work that they do day in, day out. Here's a question for Tiff. As has come up at conference over the last 2 days, this comes from Dan Smith, by the way, thank you, Dan. As has come up at conference over the last 2 days, the media are quick to show the police in a bad light. I appreciate Fed Reps support officers, but what will the PFEW be doing going forward to be seen to support their members in these circumstances? Tiff.
It's things like this, Ian. It's the continued media interviews that obviously Steve and I do and the local branches do that target their local issues. But more importantly for me, as I have been doing with our parliamentary engagements with MPs, is actually calling out for our stakeholders, our politicians, to actually start coming out and showing their support for their police officers, highlighting the good work that they're doing in their constituencies, and getting behind the police. What we also need to do is media outlets use policing for the headlines, to get those readers to draw in from those headlines that are biased against us a lot of the time. And it's going to be down to the likes of Steve and myself to actually address those headlines, and the local branches also, to actually come up against them. And it's not about war or anything like that, it's about that engagement. Let's highlight the good work and let's get those news stories out there. And more importantly, I want our leaders to come out in support of our police officers, to actually show the community and show government that actually we're doing a really, really good job.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because it was mentioned yesterday that, you know, you turn on the radio, you hear a phone-in show, the kind of thing that I do for a living. You hear voices, but you're not hearing, you know, there's a disproportionate or lack of proportionality in the countering those arguments, right? I mean, you know, you see bad headlines, certainly some that have come in particular from the Met in recent months and the last year or so. And it is wheeled out as if this is normal, as if this is the experience of every force, of every officer. And, you know, I sometimes feel like a lone voice as a journalist, you know, making that point that actually, I mean, it's not even, you wouldn't even get to half of 1% of people if you tried to work out how many across the board are in a situation that is, you know, questionable or there's some issue. But if you're not getting the support in wider other agencies, you know, from politicians and the like, then you can see why morale is down, because it's at times, it's literally at times like that you want to see people coming out and saying, no, we support the police.
Yeah. It starts
more crucial than ever.
Absolutely. It starts at home first of all, though, with our leaders. We need our chief constables, we need our senior leaders to come out and support, not just on the odd occasion, but we need that continual good news story, because there is so much good news coming out from policing. And we need proper language being used in those headlines. And I've done it myself. I've opened up on social media a news headline, and when you actually get into the nitty-gritty, it's got nothing to do with policing.
Yeah.
But they've done it because it draws the readers in.
Yeah. And
it's totally morally wrong.
Here's a question for Mukund. This comes from Darren, who says, you say the PFEW is now open and transparent, but should we know how much the CEO and others are getting paid? We know how much chief constables and MPs are paid, so why the secrecy within the PFEW? Mukund.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you, Darren, for the question. I think it's fair to say it's probably one of the most commonly asked questions. And somehow the salary information seems to be taking more traction than the work I'm currently doing. I've always said I'm going to be very open and honest, and therefore I certainly welcome the question. Salary information is a very personal information, and therefore I'm not going to go into specific details. However, what I would like to reassure the membership and Darren and anyone else interested is that it is not a number plucked in the air or a number that I might like. It is a number that's been benchmarked along with the salary information of other chief officers and other CEOs, both in the not-for-profit sector and other sectors. So it's been through its due diligence and governance. So, but thanks for asking the question.
Okay. One for Callum here. Is there any concern that negotiating for industrial rights will end up being a shambles where we give up far more than we get back?
Well, I think you have to look at the context that we are operating in at this moment in time. I was certainly uncomfortable sitting in the room next door and listening to the lack of responsibility taken in respect of police pay at this moment in time from government. That situation hasn't changed since 2010. We've had a financial crisis, as was explained in 2010. We then had attrition of 20,000 officers since 2010. We've now got back to a position of 140,000 odd officers, and we're in another financial crisis. During that period of time, there's been degradation of police pay to the tune of 27% for constables. There seems a complete and utter lack of recognition surrounding that. And we have to have a discussion within the organisation surrounding it. Where do we go from here? We've got independent research that actually highlights that issue. Government have said, PRRB have got research that we're 36% overpaid from others in comparable roles. They just don't equate.
The Home Sec raised that specific figure today.
These figures do not equate. So what alternatives do we have at this moment in time other than to consult with our membership as to what an appropriate pay mechanism is? And I firmly believe that's the right thing to do. The annals of time have told us it's the right thing to do. The annals of time have told us why we are a special case. The only people that are not listening at this moment in time to that argument appear to be government. Now, is there a risk in respect of that? Now, I would suggest, and it's been encouraged by a number of people that are sitting on the panel and have discussed the issue over the last couple of days, that we need membership to vote. The stronger the vote is, the more indication we have as an organisation the direction we need to take. That involves us all being on the same page, not just in respect of pay, but in respect of how we position our organisation moving forward in respect of police policy and issues that our members are facing and are important to them. We have to do things differently. We have to do things differently. Where has it got us since 2010? Well, it's got us to a position of degradation of police pay. Almost to an extent being patted on the head and saying, you're doing a great job, but we're not going to recognise in our remuneration package. So we need the engagement of the membership. There is a risk that that engagement doesn't happen with the membership. But initially, what we would be looking at is an indicative vote from the membership as to, is this a route that they want us to take? I don't see as much risk in that as to potentially balloting the membership around a more sensational question at another moment in time, where you have a requirement for a percentage of a vote to actually vote in favour or not vote in favour. So we have a decision to make as an organisation. The memberships have a decision to make. We have to do things differently. We have to create a better future, but we're not going to create that unless we're all on the same page, we're all pulling in the one direction, and we recognise that we all have a part to play in that.
Question for Simon. Given high inflation, increasing costs and reduction in services, how can it be justified that there is no motion at conference for increasing subs in line with the pay rise or a lower amount?
So it's worth actually probably looking at something that Kev touched on a minute ago, actually, about the process that we use. It's our job as treasurers to look at what our projected income is, projected outgoings, and then bring a recommendation to the board and the council. And then the board and the council consider that recommendation, they consider sequencing, and they consider what's the best thing to do at the moment. And the board have decided at the moment it's the best thing to retain our current level of subscriptions. We review it every year, and it will be reviewed again in the next year during 2024. And those two bodies will take a further view then.
Here's a question, this one from Joseph. Will all the attacks we as officers are coming under, with all the attacks that officers are coming under, is it time to call for another protest with our members in Westminster like the one in 2012? Steve, do you want to put some meat on the bones of 2012? I know you weren't national chair then, but...
Yeah, well, and I was involved in that protest, and funny enough, when someone talks about a protest or a rally, there's a certain board member that would be, I know, shouting down the phone saying, yes, we need a rally, and anyone on the board will know who that is. Belinda, you've got your question through. If that's you, well done. It's economies of scale. Would it work? What did it achieve last time? Do protests of that size actually work? And I sort of looked to my colleagues here about, we've had the discussions, is it value for money? Because there's an enormous amount of cost behind organising a rally, bringing our members, our national board, our national council down from across the country. It does actually work. It didn't seem to work last time. It gets us one day in the spotlight. And again, we have to look at the fiscal situation about the money we spend on it to make sure it's effective. You know, for me, things have moved on since then. Social media has become more prevalent, more effective. You know, all the interviews I've done with people such as yourself, Ian, over the time where we can get that message out there, we know government listens, moving this platform online so that with direct input from the Home Secretary, the advisors we know that are in the room, engaging with all the political parties across the spectrum to make sure they hear our message. Our parliamentary work in Parliament, in the Welsh Senate with our colleagues over there, they hear that and it resonates. And we've found that by doing that, taking the message direct to them, they understand it. Then when they go to Parliament or the Senate, they speak from a position of power, as opposed to seeing what looks like a noisy rebel outside Parliament, which, I'll be honest, anyone in London, that happens on a weekly basis. Yep. It gets lost in the fog of the traffic and who's out there. So I understand the concerns, but I think collectively it's been decided that that's not perhaps the best way at the moment. If we're going to do it, I want 140,000 cops to be there to really resonate. But then who's left to police the country?
Just on that, if I may.
Simon, yeah.
I think you're spot on, Steve. talking about something we touched on earlier, it's not about cost, it's about value. If we could get a rally or a protest in central London for a tenner and it achieved nothing, that's a tenner wasted. I'll use that somewhere else. I can help pay for a barrister. If it cost £1 million, but that £1 million changed the lives and the conditions for every police officer, it's £1 million well spent. So it's not about cost, it's about the value. So before we do anything, what value is it going to bring? Is it going to give us that final piece that will help unlock new conditions for our members? The answer is no. We can use that money elsewhere, somewhere more effectively.
Callum, do you want to say something?
I'd just like to build on that a little bit. You've got to look at what the outcome, what was the result of the last march in London. Yes, I was there. I was interviewed on telly with wearing a really dodgy jumper, but that's a different story. But actually, if you ask the politicians that were involved and you ask the advisors that were involved in politics at that time, other than it being reported on the news, what impact did it make? Did it make a change? No, actually, they bunkered in for a period of time thereafter. And subsequently, we have felt the effects of not that event, but that relationship breakdown between government and policing in general. So I think it's important to recognise that we need to do things differently. It might make us all feel an awful lot better walking through the streets of London and saying this is wrong and whatnot.
Did it look too radical, do you think?
I don't think it looked radical. I think it showed a level of solidarity amongst the membership that is important. And if we could only harness that solidarity into the conversation surrounding potentially our ballot at this moment in time, I think that's really important. But we have to evidence things in a different way, in an irrefutable way to government that has got an independence attached. With all due respect, we as an organisation can say what we want, and they'll go, well, you would say that. However, it's more difficult for them to refute credible organisations outside of policing that may be in a think tank environment, whatever the case may be, and I'm actually pointing out, no, this is the evidence that supports the position of policing. It's very difficult to turn around to them and go, well, you would say that, when they don't have a horse in the race, to be fair. We need to do things differently, but if that solidarity can feed itself into engaging with the organisation, giving clear direction and instruction to us as an executive to deliver on their behalf, that's achieving what we needed to achieve.
Can I just add to that?
McCunn, please do.
Please, thank you. So I think it's also important to recognise the policing landscape has changed, and I think everyone knows that. So how we negotiate and how we influence, that is also needs to change, in changing to reflect the change in landscape. Reflecting on the Home Secretary's speech and what some of us have been speaking about, 7% or 17%, one of the main issues we need to really deal with is what is the P factor? The risk to lives that police officers carry when they leave home, not knowing whether they want to return back home that evening after the shift or not. Neither the Home Secretary nor the PRRB speak about the P factor. So when they speak about 17% or 7%, we are not even considering the risk to life. And SMF, the independent think tank who did the review, made it very, very clear that P factor should be over and above the 17%. So the real deficit is 17% plus P factor. And I think it's important to recognize that. The other bit I want to add is in all of this, where do the employers stand? Because as the Home Secretary, as the government of the day, they will tend to listen more to the employers. They should, of course, listen to us, and we have a role to play in that. But we as an organization need to take a view on how do we work with the employers, but at the same time challenge the employers to make sure that they are negotiating the best possible terms and conditions for the membership.
Okay. Question from Alistair. Given that special constables have been able to join as full members of the Federation for some time, what are the plans to drive representation for special constables at a national level, given the unique challenges and concerns associated with that role within policing? Tiff, do you want to take that?
Well, first and foremost, special constables have a huge part to play in policing. They also have a huge part to play within the Federation. And obviously the National Council and the National Board took the decision to include special constables in the Federation. And I'm so pleased to say that we are getting more and more special constables joining the Federation. And we need to increase that figure. We still haven't got, I would love to have 100% of special constables signing up for the Federation. And if we can get them on board through the local branches and up to the national level, then fantastic, absolutely fantastic. It's a big responsibility to have, and 90% of our specials have have primary jobs themselves. It's a huge commitment, but please get in touch with us. And if we can make that happen, then absolutely.
You're absolutely right, if I may, Ian.
Go for it.
There's a really important part for the Central Federation, the National Federation to play, but every single rep in the country, 1,200 of us, have got a part to play in selling the good work that reps do up and down the country. Because it's got to come from the ground upwards. Because you're repping a nick in any town or city, they've got a far better idea of the issues there and how the Federation can help. We've currently got 46% of specials signed up, just over 3,000. We'll do everything we can to demonstrate the value of membership, essentially, and to demonstrate that if you're a special, you're just as much a member as I am. No difference between either of us. We both pay the £19.45 a month net, not gross. It makes us exactly the same. Parity within the organisation, no second-class citizens. You're just as welcome, you're just as important as any of us.
Steve, you want to say something on that?
Yeah, and just to add to that as well, that certainly maybe every 2 months, Nikki Ryan, who was currently leading the Special Constabulary Forum for us, has been hosting online events. That's had a fantastic take-up from specials across the country. There's some really good expertise online that has been mentioned, that they've got primary jobs as well. Would be stupid not to try and harness those primary skills they've got. They're bringing into policing, giving it to us for free. And we've commented on this, and I think the figure is about 1 million hours that the Special Constabulary give to the police forces across the country, but to the public, that's immeasurable. That's something we've really got. So for me, they're always welcome, always will be. Sign up, get involved, become a Fed rep. See if there's a vacancy, join, get involved, more than welcome.
Just one more, if I may. The question asked, what can we do as a federation? There's another aspect to this. What can policing do to try and encourage specials to become members of the federation? There's some police forces up and down the country, some PCCs, some chief constables, who've shown that they really value their special constables, that they've done everything they can to ease that transition into membership. One or two could take a lead from that and follow on and really embrace. And just in the last couple of weeks, Gloucestershire Constabulary, for example, have taken some really positive steps thanks to their secretary, Ian White, thanks to Nikki Ryan. The more forces that do that, the more we'll be able to protect and be the voice for specials.
Okay. Just a quick one here from James, who says, looking ahead, is this expected to be the format for conference or just for this year? Steve, you're a set designer.
Interesting question. I mean, necessity forced change this year, and I think we can have a hybrid. We've got to look at other operating models, see what we can do, because the cost of annual conference to physically have it is astronomical. We spend an awful lot of money to get not a great deal back in terms of if that's a vote for the subscription rises, and it's an expensive way to have a physical face-to-face to give over information. Yeah. So for me, personally, putting on the spot, I think this is the way forward in terms of hybrid, of launching it to the rest of policing, but also the wider parts of the world, looking at our international policing colleagues. And maybe we can get to maybe every second, third year have a physical conference, but I'd like to expand that and have the members come also, because we're limited to our Police Federation colleagues, certain delegates, external guests. If I could, I'd open it up and say, cops around the country, come down, get involved. Yeah. If we're going to do it, let's have a week of policing. We did something with yourself earlier in the year, we had a week of policing, it was fantastic. So this is a start. We've got to evolve, we've got to see how it grows. Again, cost is a major factor, but again, it's not just cost, it's the value. I think over this last 2 days, we've had 13 or 14 really good information sessions, some fantastic questions from the members, which they might not ordinarily get if they're sat in an auditorium. So it's an ongoing process.
We've had a lot of serious questions, and sometimes challenging, sometimes uncomfortable, but I think you'd all understand they don't really come any more serious than this. From Darren, who says, where did McCund get his socks from?
Good question, actually. I was actually telling Tiff
I
this.
actually spotted those at 6:30 this morning, by the way.
Did you?
But,
Right.
yes, I thought.
I was kind of thinking, do I really set the onboarding for Christmas by showing
right.
red but not go full on?
Yeah.
But no, this was a Christmas gift for my kids.
Okay. I thought there were little Santas, but they're little dogs, I noticed.
That's Freddie, my Cocker Spaniel.
There you go. And here is a final question for everybody here. Simon Payne makes this point. He says, we couldn't do our job without the support of our families. As conference draws to a close, what message do you have for them? Steve, we'll start with you.
As the Police Federation of England and Wales, we're there to support our colleagues. We're also there for the families. If you've got concerns about your loved ones who are doing the job and you think they need help, reach out to the local federation team or reach out nationally. We are there to help. We've got access to some amazing colleagues, some great resources. It's one of support.
Tiff, same question.
For me, it's a huge thank you. It's the family members that have the Christmas dinners without their loved one because they're out there running towards danger, not knowing when they're coming home. It's the kids' birthday parties and alike. So to those family members, it's the big thank you. And you are as important as your loved one that's going out there working that shift. And a lot of our family members don't understand what we do day in, day out, because we don't want to put that burden on them for that fear that they will have the minute our officers walk out of the door. But please talk. Start to understand what your loved one is doing each and every day. And like Steve said, if you've got any concerns, get in touch. Because we're all in it together and it includes everyone. It has to.
McKinnon, just a brief word on that one, if you would, as well.
Yeah, thank you. I see family, friends, loved ones. They are a source of strength. And many a times they can also be a voice of reason. And please don't underestimate the value and the support that you would provide. I know for a fact the value and support my family provides me. And it's very difficult to explain in words many a times. So please don't assume for a second anyone's taking you for granted. The amount of support that you provide is incredible and invaluable. So as I said this morning to the membership, it's the same message to the families as well, and friends and loved ones, which is please keep the faith.
And Callum, briefly, if you would, sir.
I mean, a lot has already been said, and listen, police officers take risks. Families understand sometimes these risks that they take. They understand that when an officer leaves home, then things have the potential to go wrong. Yet, you stand by these officers, you continue to support these officers, you continue to think these thoughts and love and care for them. And that is so important. I know from my own side, appreciate there's differing pressures, but sometimes when the mood isn't great and you go home and the children are just don't understand it because they're young. But you have to take time to reflect on the support and be thankful for that support that they give. I have to, we all have to, and it's just an unconditional thank you to all these loved ones out there. And additionally, as a member of the public, as a member of the Police Federation, those officers that potentially put their lives on the line for me.
And Simon, again, briefly, if you would, Simon.
Yeah, of course. I've been in the job for a long old time now. It's been an interesting ride, ups and downs. And I don't think it's an exaggeration to suggest, were it not for my family, the people who love me and who I love, I probably might not be here. And there might be different views on whether that's a good or a bad thing, but it's a fact. And I think that underlines the importance, because we can't do our job without that support behind us. So my last word is actually for the government. As you're starting to look after police officers better, as you're starting to look after our colleagues better, let's not forget their families as well. And let's make sure that they're not left behind.
It's a profound and good point to finish on. Thank you to our final panel, to Steve, to Tiff, to Callum, to Simon, to Mukund.